And how are you at spreadsheets?
Okay, I'm just gonna stop you right there. I'm loving this Q&A, but I think what's important right now is my positive attitude.
All right, awesome. Hey, Greg, let's talk about this one. Thanks for submitting it. And I want to go over some of the things that you wrote when you submitted the piece so that make sure that we're on the same page. So you had said you've been animating in games for 13 years, you teach animation, and you freelance in your spare time, and over the last few years, you've been trying to get experience in the episodic, film, and commercial parts of the industry. But since your reel is so heavily loaded with game animation, you have a hard time getting those roles. I understand what you're saying. You've been working on personal shots to show your ability to handle these kinds of projects and better flesh out your reel. It makes total sense. I'm with you. All right, so you have two goals. Short-term goal, improve this shot to an acceptable film or episodic level of polish. And long-term, alter your existing reel to show that you're a good candidate for those roles. Makes sense. All right, cool. All right, so let's talk about this one first from a performance aspect. And then we'll talk about more polish and noodly types of things we can do there. And then I'll look at your demo reel and give any thoughts about that. So I think the thing that strikes me right off the bat is how it starts and ends kind of in the same feeling, same tone. So she's here and she's here. The only difference is she moves a little bit further in screen and she's smiling more. And so I wish there was more progression. I wish she started and stopped in some different place. And so I think that pushing that further will get us to a much better spot. Now, working backwards from the end, if you want the ending to be where she's kind of like straight up and down with the big smile on her face to show, like the line says, what the important part is her positive attitude. That could be a really great like exclamation point. Like she's straight up and down as like the exclamation point at the end of the shot. Or you could have her really engaged and leaning forward towards the person. Where she's like really getting up into their face and saying like positive attitudes is what's important, right? She's really, what would be the right way? This way, leaning this way, and like really connecting and like, look at me, look at how positive I'm being, even though, you know, from the line we know it's kind of like a misdirect from the actual question. Neither one is right. Neither one is wrong. They're also not the only two options. I'm just trying to spitball ideas on how to make things different. Let's say we're gonna go with your idea with the sitting up straight and being the exclamation point at the end. I would change the beginning. Instead of having her sitting up straight at the beginning, I would do something different. Maybe have her like off to one side and maybe her head is kind of contrapposto to her shoulders, and maybe she's kind of, maybe this is too extreme, but something different. I would try. You could also try the version where she's kind of leaning forward and that she hears the question and then is kind of taken aback and decides to go into the perfect attitude. But progression is the key word. Contrast. How does her thought process progress her through the shot so she ends in a different place than she started? Now, in the middle, you do have her lean forward. That's great. We've got something different here. And then this part, I don't quite buy. It doesn't feel quite right to me. It could be on the right track, but it's not sold particularly effectively yet. I'll talk more about this as I go into more acting performance type idea brainstorming. But this is the moment that feels particularly rushed, I guess. Like this pose change. I really like the idea of her doing this. I think that's cool for enjoying this this back and forth we're doing. But coming back into this feels particularly I don't know, I guess like TV animation acting choices. And I know you said you're going towards episodic or film, but having, you know, talked to a lot of people in the episodic animation world, those choices just come out of no time. There's no time to do anything to really focus on any particular shots. It's just about getting as much stuff in there as possible. So they fall back on very similar acting choices. Most of them hate that idea, but there's just no time. But you don't want to do that when you're doing your own personal shot. You want to show that you can think about those performance ideas in a very specific way and not fall back on the same standard TV acting choices that they're forced to use just because of time constraints. And that will help then get you those episodic roles, I would think, because they see that you can act and that you can hit those beats and perform well. And then when you get those roles, you'll be forced to make the simpler acting choices because you're out of time. All right, so thinking about this in those terms,
I'm just gonna.
you know what? Let's go step by step through here. So,
And how are you at spreadsheets?
you've got her kind of doing a little bit of a when he says spreadsheets. I get what you're going for. I don't think it's pushed enough. I think you can go a lot further. And to push
How
the
are you at
contrast,
spreadsheets?
if that's a really good, like, surprised pose because you're showing the whites of her eyes above the iris, here I think you could relax her even more. Now, apart from the pose, we talked about having a slightly different pose, but what if you really relaxed her eyes to be much more comfortable, bordering on sleepy, bring her brows down and relax them a little bit, maybe even relax her mouth corner so it's not quite as tilted up for the smile. And then when you go to here, you have the brows raising so much more, you have the eyes widening so much more, and you really feel the contrast. So to act that out for the reference, it would be something like she's listening like this, and then goes. So it's much bigger and broader than what's in there currently. You could also have a little bit of a. Well, I guess there's two ways to go. You could either have a little bit of a body reaction too. So if she is kind of, let's say, slouched to one side, doesn't mean it's the best idea, just something I threw out there. If she's slouched to one side, kind of almost bored in the way she's listening, and then you have her go like that, and there's a slight body adjust when she hears spreadsheets. Uh-oh. You could also, you could play with maybe having her start with a smile, even if she's kind of more relaxed in the upper face and she's smiling, and then it goes away when she hears spreadsheets. That maybe that dropping of the face with the widening of the upper face would help communicate that, oh no, feeling when she has to misdirect. So you could have a slight change in the body because of that. That was my original point on that tangent. Slight change in the body.
Okay.
And
I'm just.
Honestly, I would push this pose even further. I'd get even more whites of the eyes around. If, like, what is the max you can go before the rig starts to break and it crashes? See how much white you can get up there above her eye, and even a little bit below if possible. That's a terrible paint over, but I think you get the point. And then your little eye darts will be a little bit more impactful because they'll be swimming around within the whites of the eye. I think it'll feel a little bit more panicked, which is good. And I would milk this pose for whatever you can.
Okay.
So here, you have her already moving before she takes the breath.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
There's a really excellent inhale right there that you can utilize. That the.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
Okay, I'm just gonna. That I think is a really great like starting motion for her. So instead of having her lean forward and during that lean she goes, I'm just gonna stop you right there. If you have her frozen in that pose where she's like deer in headlights, it goes, okay, I'm just gonna stop you right there. And that kick of the vocalization of her breath is what kicks her out of that pose that you're holding. Right now she's moving before that. Right? You want to try and contain it, milk it as long as possible so that is what brings her out of that pose that she's got. It'll also add to the feeling of the deer in headlights kind of, oh no, what should I do? Okay. And that's what like breaks her out of that moment. A little snappier.
Okay, I'm just gonna stop you right there. I'm loving this Q&A, but
I think that's great. Like I said, I think that's a really cool choice.
right there. I'm loving this Q&A, but I think what's important right now. Okay, I'm just gonna stop you right there. I'm loving. I'm just gonna.
I don't know that I would do this. Again, this feels just like a generic gesture, like add a point and then lift her wrist. It doesn't feel like it's specific to anything. If you want her to be like, I don't know if the intention is like, just wait a minute. If that's what it is.
Okay, I'm just gonna stop you right there.
I feel like something a little bit more specific in the way that she moves the hand. I'm just going to stop you right there. I think that to me would communicate, just hold on a minute, if that's what your intention is. But right now it kind of comes in like this. And I don't quite get the thought process there. It feels like a gesture for the sake of gesture.
Okay, I'm just gonna stop you right there. Okay, I'm just gonna stop you.
Yeah, okay. If she can put it up first. Okay, I'm just going to stop you right there. And that feels a bit more specific. It feels connected to the line. It feels connected to her thought process. Like, hold on, just wait.
You right there. I'm loving this Q&A, but I think
that's all good.
I think what's important.
And then this, like I said, the recoil and pulling her wrist back, I don't quite buy it.
This Q&A, but I think what's important right now is my positive attitude.
And we'll circle back to that.
Loving this Q&A, but I think what's important right now. Q&A, but I think what's important right now is my positive attitude.
And I think that you're really close to this end moment paying off really well. What I think it needs is more separation between
I think what's important right now
the thought process. So she already knows where she's going with this sentence. She's not making it up as she goes. In this part, she knows that when she says what I think what's important right now, she already knows what she's going to say as her positive attitude. I feel like you can use the silence between those two sentences to punctuate her getting into this bright and cheery pose. Right? Really so like, this is what's important before she says it. And so if you have her say, I think what's important right now is my positive attitude. And you feel that like shift into, here's what I'm selling. Now I'm going to say it. And you're close. I think you're getting there. And I think that's what your intention is.
now
Is because she kind of lifts up and gets there, but it's all one fluid motion. And so what it becomes then to act it out is that she goes, what's important right now is my positive attitude. And so it's all kind of fluid into the accent, to the recoil and the settle, instead of having it go, what's important right now is my positive attitude. And you hold that, like there's so much tension, and this is the thing. This is the thing right here that I want you to see, the positivity, right? Instead of having it fluid into the overshoot of the head, into the accent of the head, where it all just kind of blends together. It's a nice transition, and I think it's animated well, but it doesn't communicate that feeling that I think would punch it up a little bit and show her performance, show her thought process. I think that would make her thought process more entertaining, is that she snaps into that pose. This is the thing. Right here, watch this, and then says it. Okay. You could also, I think what I was doing there, I don't know, I wasn't watching myself exactly, but if you snap into that and you hold this big smile, is my positive attitude, and you kind of say that whole line with this big smile, you know? And I think that you're close to that as well, but you could just push it. Push it more. Get a bigger smile in there. Get a fake big smile. To fake her positivity. Okay. Then working backwards into this moment.
I think what's important right now is my positive attitude.
I would experiment with saying, just hold on a second. I think what's important, and even lean further in, maybe. Just hold on a second. I think what's important right now is my positive attitude. I don't know. I mean, you've thought about this much longer than I have. I'm just spitballing, brainstorming ideas. Another version would be, she says, hold on a second. What is the line there? Forget.
I'm loving this Q&A, but I think what's important.
Loving this Q&A, but I think what's important right now is my positive attitude. And so on that one I didn't go straight up and down. That one was ending more leaned forward. So maybe you do need that progression of going backwards. Loving this Q&A, so I think what's important. Loving this Q&A, so I think what's important right now is my positive attitude. I don't know about that. It's very similar to what you have, so maybe what you have is very close. Maybe it has to do with the hand, maybe it has to do with the lead-in where I talked about this, and just having it do this is kind of breaking things for me a little earlier, so I don't quite buy the thought process, and then this part doesn't help.
But I think what's important right now is my positive attitude. But I think what's important right now,
You know what? I wonder if you kept this but had her shift her head. Right now it's, this is again just like brainstorming ideas, but right now she's kind of doing this, right? And her head is in line with her torso. What if you break it and have her go like that? So that she goes, I think what's important right now. I think what's important right now. And you have that little shift in there within this pose to contrast with the head against the chest, so that it's not leaning the same way. I think what's important right now. Maybe that helps add a little bit more uniqueness and specificity to it.
I think what's important right now is my positive attitude.
And then go into what we talked about here. Okay. So those are my thoughts about the performance. Like I said, it's close, but you can get more specific and you can flesh out her thought process a bit more and add that progression. Okay. Now let's talk about polish within the current choices. Okay.
And how are you at spreadsheets?
Okay, I'm just gonna.
All right. So right here, it kind of feels like everything moves together. Like her root feels like it's moving forward, rotating forward, and that makes everything move together. You have the head leading with a little bit of a twist before that happens, but when that happens, everything moves together from the base of her body. It feels like it's all kind of stuck on a spike. Like there is a piece of metal running straight through from her, the bottom of her spine, up through the top of her head. It's all moving together very stiffly. But we can move our bodies in a much more organic way. And so I would challenge you to experiment with how can you break that up a bit. Maybe the head leads, maybe the chest leads, maybe the root leads and her head drags a little bit. But the distance from the head to the chest can change, especially like this. It feels like here my head is, you can feel it going further inside my silhouette. And even though here it's kind of dipping in, you definitely can take your head and just translate it down. Just shrink the neck a little bit. Take a pass at the translate Y of the neck or the head so that you get that organic feeling of things kind of moving different from each other instead of being on a spike. And it's straight up and down.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
But the lead and follow of the chest, neck, and head, the translation of the head,
I'm just gonna.
all of those things will help add weight, and you can have a little bit more fun with the arcs of them.
Okay, I'm just gonna stop you right there. I'm loving this Q&A. Okay, I'm just gonna stop you right there. I'm loving. Okay, I'm just gonna stop you right there. I'm loving this Q&A, but
this part, the loving this Q&A thing, is executed really well. I think the animation's really nice there. I think it looks really nice.
I'm loving this Q&A, but
there's a lot of specifics in the finger motions, the wrist motion. It's looking good.
I'm loving this Q&A, but I think what's right there. I'm loving this Q&A, but
you can do a little bit more with a translate Y of the head. What kind of, like here, maybe her head should dip under a little bit more. You know, the head can be its own kind of small ball bounce within the frame. You don't want to disconnect it too much from the chest. You'll get that kind of chicken head sort of feeling, but a little bit can go a long way. Experiment with it.
I'm loving this Q&A, but I think what's important right now is Q&A. But I think what's
You know, another thing about this part that I think I'm realizing that might feel a little bit more, like I said, like the TV sort of there's no time acting choice, is that it feels like her chest does one thing and then her head and her hand do the follow through together. So the chest moves and then the head and the hand feel connected to each other. And so maybe it's giving that impression like there's no time, just offset some things and move on. So I think they're too synced. And also you can get that relationship of chest, neck, and head to be a little bit weightier. And then what does the hand do after that? And what is the last thing to come to rest? And how does it come to rest? Right now it feels like you just took this pose and then delayed the head and the hand a little bit, so that one goes there first and then the other two do it together. So that's, I think, another thing that's contributing to it, to that feeling.
What's important right now is my positive attitude. Now is my positive attitude. Now is my positive attitude.
So I think a lot of the other things that I would say about this I kind of already covered, like bigger smile, bigger contrast between the facial poses. So get her a little bit more relaxed, in the beginning, so that you have somewhere to go and make it bigger when she hears spreadsheets. That is the word, right?
How are you at spreadsheets?
Yes. Okay. And then ending that like exclamation point for the final pose and getting the big smile and like, this is what you want to see. Focus on this. Focus on my positivity. Bigger smile. Now, how she gets into this pose, same things I already mentioned. Work on that head, neck, and chest relationship. What leads, what follows? How can you maybe add a little bit more of an arc to the head? Maybe take a pass at the translate Y of the head. Things like that.
Now is my positive attitude.
And then here, this is another thing you could propagate throughout the whole thing, is that it feels like positive attitude is only in one axis. It is only in the X, let's say. Could be different on this rig, but it's only in the X axis. But you'll find that it's a heavy object, and no matter what, you're going to be using all three axes to do that move. It's going to be like maybe it tilts a little bit to this side and then it lands at the bottom and tilts over and comes up like that in very small amounts. You don't have to make it look like that. But if you did that and then reduced those curves by like 90% and you end up with just that. And you like, there's no way for me to do it like a robot with only one axis. It's almost impossible. I have to use all three because it's a heavy object on the top of my neck. And you're also going to use a little bit of the twist. That there's going to be a little bit of this going on in that move. It's going to be a little offset from the up and down. It's not going to be changing directions at the same frame that the up and down changes direction, but any head movement is going to involve all three axes. And they're going to start and stop at slightly different times than each other. So you can propagate that throughout the rest of it. All the other head moves, same thing. You're going to want to use a few more axes. You're going to want to offset them a little bit purposefully. Don't just randomize it because you won't end up with a great result, but you want to take some reference, try and see what you can learn from the reference, study it. But I think those things will help you a lot.